Hey folks, my name is Chris at Hauseit. Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic that's on the minds of many buyers during the purchase process here in Florida. And that is, what happens if damage occurs to a property prior to closing? Well, fortunately, this question can be easily addressed in the standard Florida purchase contract. If you take a look, and I'll read it with you, it says, Part 11, Property Maintenance. Except for ordinary wear and tear and casualty loss, seller shall maintain the property, including but not limited to lawn, shrubbery, and pool, in the condition existing as of effective date. Quote, as is maintenance requirement. See paragraph 9A for escrow procedures if applicable. So this is super important, and this is actually very similar to the process in New York as well, where the condition at closing should be that as of the effective date, which is in simple language as defined, it's the contract date. The date in this contract, the effective date is defined as the date that the contract is fully executed by both the buyer and the seller. So because of this, in both states, New York and Florida, as a smart buyer, what you want to do is really document the condition of the property on the date that it's fully executed, or as close to it as possible. And we're talking about, taking photos, maybe you did an inspection right before, videos and such, just so you have proof, because, come closing day, maybe you haven't seen the property for weeks or months, and then you do the final walkthrough the day of closing or the day right before closing, and you see, hey, there's like huge scuff marks or broken like chunks of the wall that are missing. Maybe it's damaged from the movers when the seller moved out, or whatever it might be, or a leak that wasn't there before. Well, that's quite unfortunate, but where's the proof? You have to be able to show proof of what the property was like as of the contract signing date by both parties, and this is where evidence actually comes in very handy. And as a additional pro tip, many of you may be wondering, how is this determined, or what happens if there is a casualty loss at closing? Well, fortunately in Florida, it's quite simple. Instead of having to really dispute this, from scratch, it's actually defined in the standard Florida contract on what happens. And I'll read it to you. So Part M, risk of loss. If after effective date, but before closing, property is damaged by fire or other casualty, in quotes, casualty loss, and cost of restoration, which shall include cost of pruning or removing damaged trees, does not exceed 1.5% of purchase price, cost of restoration shall be an obligation of seller, and closing shall proceed pursuant to terms of this contract. If restoration is not completed as of closing, a sum equal to 125% of estimated cost to complete restoration, not to exceed 1.5% of purchase price, will be escrowed at closing. If actual cost of restoration exceeds escrowed amount, seller shall pay such actual costs, but not in excess of 1.5% of purchase price. Any unused portion of escrowed amount shall be returned to seller. If cost of restoration exceeds 1.5% of purchase price, buyer shall elect to either take property as is together with a 1.5% or receive a refund of the deposit, thereby releasing buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. Seller's sole obligation with respect to tree damage by casualty or other natural occurrence shall be cost of pruning or removal. So it's, the contracts here in Florida, again, you can have a lawyer review. We don't provide legal advice, but, most buyers in practice are able to read this sort of in plain English and understand what it says. And what this essentially is saying is, 1.5% is kind of the cap for if there is damage or casualty loss prior to closing, and you can document it. There's essentially a procedure per what's written exactly here on what happens. The seller is responsible. If it's above this 1.5% cap, then the buyer either can get that deposit and cancel the contract, or take it as is, but also take the 1.5%. So there you have it. In Florida, it's pretty straightforward. It's all documented out on what happens if something happens after the contract date but before closing. Again, very, very, very rare, but you know, in the off chance that you come across this unfortunate situation, at least here in Florida and Miami, you know, it's covered by the contract on what happens. So we hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit like or subscribe. My name is Chris at Hauseit. We can help you save 6% when you sell with a Hauseit agent-assisted FSBO listing. And when you buy, we can help you save 2% or more by giving you 2/3 of the buyer agent commission, subject to us keeping a small minimum of 1% or $7,500 as of this writing. And 2/3 of the buyer agent commission can be a lot more than you'd expect, because instead of just 3%, some new developments here in Florida will offer 5, 6, or 7%. So 2/3 of that can be substantially more than your closing costs. We cover all of Southeast Florida, including Miami, where we're covered. So Miami-Dade County, Broward, Palm Beach, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. In New York, we also cover New York City, all 5 boroughs, Long Island, and the Hudson Valley. My name is Chris at Hauseit, and we'll see you on the next one.